If you've been watching my videos for a while, you may recall I did one a couple of years ago where I expressed my dislike for comedies starring Adam Sandler. No, you did not misread the title, and no, my opinion has not changed on Lil Nicky, Big Daddy, and You Don't Mess With Zohan. However, believe it or not, when I made that video, Adam Sandler was a fairly popular and well-liked comedian among the general public. Since 2011, mostly after the release of Jack and Jill, Sandler backlash has risen a lot, and my comments seem almost mild compared to what others have said about his work in recent years. Yet, oddly, I find myself defending Adam Sandler lately, mainly because I feel his career has actually taken a turn for the better. To get a sense of why, I want to go back in history to a year where, had things turned out differently, maybe his career would have gone in a different direction. In late 2002, he starred in two films that were basically deconstructions of the typical Sandler character. In Paul Thomas Anderson's Punch Drunk Love, Sandler played his first dramatic role, and it showed he had the talent to pull off a serious turn. Yet, when you really look at his character of Barry Egan, he's not entirely different from the usual Sandler personality. He's an overgrown man-child who finds himself in shouting matches with an arrogant antagonist while also trying to get the girl. Barry is somewhat insecure and holding back a lot of anger, not unlike Happy Gilmore or his character in The Wedding Singer. The whole subplot about trying to get airline points from pudding cups and then using those points to fly to Hawaii to win the affections of a young woman he fancies could have been used in one of his lowbrow comedies. Yet through the lens of Paul Thomas Anderson's direction and screenplay, we see a different side to that character, and it works tremendously, and is still Sandler's best role to date. Similarly, he also plays a deconstruction of his personality in the animated film 8 Crazy Nights, which I think is one of his better comedies, and not just because of the great animation. My problem with a lot of Sandler comedies is that he frequently plays somebody he thinks is charming and likable, but I tend to find absolutely obnoxious, and he insults everyone he comes across. While 8 Crazy Nights still dabbles in a lot of his penchant for lowest common denominator toilet humor, it's the rare time where he's actually self-aware. Sandler actually knows his character is a terrible person, and the film slowly but surely tries to peel him away and see why he's such an obnoxious troublemaker. So in an odd way, this animated avatar of Sandler ends up being one of his least annoying performances in an interesting bit of reverse psychology. Unfortunately, these two attempts by Sandler to reinvent himself flopped at the box office. Instead, it was Mr. Deeds that was his big hit that year, thus telling Sandler that audiences would rather see him play the same character and do the same shtick and hit the same comedic beats over and over again. However, even as he continued to make stupid comedies, we would occasionally see another attempt by Sandler to show his other side. In Spanglish, he provided a more subtle performance as a father and husband dealing with the stress of his marriage and his business, and he managed to be very down-to-earth without resorting to facial expressions he might otherwise do. While he does launch into a bit of his trademark silly voice in Reign Over Me, he gave a decent portrayal of a man dealing with the loss of his family in the worst way imaginable. While the film as a whole became a bit too heavy-handed, Sandler was one of its bright spots. Then there was Funny People, which, like 8 Crazy Nights and Punch Drunk Love, also had him playing a deconstruction of himself. For that film, he allowed Judd Apatow to portray an actor clearly modeled after Sandler, in a rather unflattering way, and even poked fun at his various outlandish comedy roles. Despite the title and people involved, this was quite a dramatic film and role for him, and again showed another side of Sandler we're unaccustomed to. He again showed his self-awareness that made it seem like he would turn his career around, but sadly the film tanked. However, around 2012, I think we started to see a more selective Sandler emerge. Yes, he still made That's My Boy, which continued his trend of making obnoxious protagonists we're somehow supposed to root for, but he also executive produced and lent his voice to the animated film Hotel Transylvania. This was a rare case of Sandler putting on a silly voice and actually being funny. A lot of that credit does go to the film's director, Genndy Tartakovsky, who knows a lot about classic cartoon comedy and applied that knowledge to the animation of the film. While Peter Bain and Robert Smigel's screenplay was likely already funny on the page, Tartakovsky was able to elevate the material and make a hilarious little movie. Most importantly, he was able to actually craft Sandler into a likable lead, and he brings the right vocal reactions to a Count Dracula dealing with a human invading his monster-filled hotel. For the sequel, Sandler took a more active role, and according to Tartakovsky, he was very hands-on with the story and writing. And yet, aside from a couple of toilet jokes, I did not find much trace of Sandler's usual writing shtick on the screen. With Tartakovsky handling the animation and Smigel working alongside Sandler, they were able to collaborate with him and probably tune out the less funny gags during production. The storyboard artists also deserve a lot of credit for the visual jokes. Tartakovsky is not the only auteur director Sandler has worked with over the last couple of years. In the criminally underrated Jason Reitman film Men, Women, and Children, he played a father with a porn addiction who finds his family slowly crumbling around him, particularly his relationship with his wife. We see a more subtle Sandler than we're used to, and the screenplay does not shy away from saying that some of his behavior is inappropriate in a marriage. Yet there's also heartbreak there too. It was a strong performance from him that continued his promise from Punch Drunk Love that he had some excellent dramatic chops. It's a shame not many people saw that film. Ditto for The Cobbler, which I think got a very unfair critical drubbing earlier this year. Working with Tom McCarthy, who is currently getting Oscar buzz for the film Spotlight, this was a sweet little indie about a humble shoe repairman, and the movie takes full advantage of its magical scenario. Sandler manages to successfully mix some of the more comedic moments with the dramatic scenes. Yes, the third act takes an odd detour, but the film as a whole was a charmer, and Sandler played a role in conveying a lot of the ideas McCarthy brought to his screenplay. Even Pixels could be considered a sort of step in the right direction for Sandler. Yes, it suffered from a not particularly funny script and some annoying secondary characters, but the fact that he hired an accomplished director like Chris Columbus to command the production rather than Dennis Dugan or Stephen Brill showed he knew he needed someone with the right visual eye to bring the big video game sequences to life. And those are the best parts of the film, particularly the Pac-Man chase and the final battle. His career is going to take an interesting turn over the next couple of years, and it's exactly the route I've been hoping he would take. Yes, he's still doing those lowbrow comedies, but they're going to be straight to Netflix. When you go to the movies this month, you won't be seeing The Ridiculous Six playing beside The Force Awakens. It'll just be on an online streaming service, and guess what? If you don't want to see it, you can just swipe it away. Netflix is not some sort of video game requiring you to play every level. They won't tell you The Ridiculous Six is mandatory viewing if you want to unlock new episodes of Daredevil. For those who are hardcore Sandler fans and are curious, it's there. For everyone else, there's no reason to complain about something you will most likely not see. In the meantime, he's still going to be working in animation, as Hotel Transylvania 3 is being written as we speak, and with Smigel behind the script again, and any one of the talented artists at Sony directing, I'm sure it'll be just as funny and entertaining as the first two. And I also expect Sandler to pop up in some smaller dramas by acclaimed filmmakers in the future. I think Adam Sandler has been making some very good decisions lately, and I'm thankful he's still utilizing his talent, while also being given control to make the comedies he loves doing. I may not be a fan of them, but if they'll just be a completely optional choice nobody will have to pay extra for, that's completely fine. And you know what? I may even watch The Ridiculous Six and see how his newfound Netflix career progresses. But that doesn't mean you have to. See you next time.